Welcome to today's podcast. My name's Dominic, and we're going to be discussing the idea of metta, also known as loving kindness or loving friendliness. And it is a concentrative meditation technique that helps to cultivate a state of compassion, equanimity, and well-being for yourself and for those around you. And it's a concept within meditation that can prove challenging for new or seasoned meditators, because we currently don't live in a society that asks us to wish well for ourselves. A lot of our attention, a lot of our focus, a lot of our compassion and caring is often directed onto others. And in this practice, one of the ways that we start to cultivate it is we start to direct those same energies towards ourselves. And this is a big practice to understand, especially in your journey of meditation. And in future episodes, I'll dive a little bit deeper as to what kind of the Buddha says around this topic and how he presented it to his monks. But ultimately, it was one of the topics that he gave as a resolution to fear. That if you can really start to cultivate this in your heart and your mind, you can reduce the amount of fear in your life. And I'll be honest, like the first time I had anything to do with metta, I thought it was kind of silly and I disregarded it. And you may do the same, and that's okay. But I would stress this point. If you choose to not lean into the practice now, don't make that forever. See, sometimes we get in this habit of saying, I will never do something. And by putting that label on it, we remove any options for growth, any options for those things to be impactful. And so I would ask that you don't do that to yourself. Give yourself an opportunity. So maybe it isn't for you right now. That's cool. Just put it on the back burner and come visit it again when it makes sense. But if you are ready to get into the practice, it will begin shortly after the following chimes. Really, the way I like to think about your posture and your practice is that you need to be able to breathe, and you need to let your hands relax somewhere so they're not going to be fidgeting and distracting you. And you need to kind of have a bit of comfort in whatever posture you take. And so that's kind of the general high level cues for how to sit for your practice. From there, you have the option to close your eyes or leave them open, depending on what feels safest for you. But if you do leave them open, kind of let them kind of softly look at something a few inches or meters in front of you so that they're not distracted either. And with that being said, I invite you to close the eyes, turn the attention inwards, and we will begin practice. And as you close the eyes and you're settling in and getting yourself collected for practice today, I'd like to invite you just take a mental note of where you are right now in this moment. And it's everything from how you're feeling physically and mentally, um, to how your body feels today. Like the body has its own kind of rhythm to it, right? Like, are you feeling tired or heavy or sluggish or whatever kind of sensations, or super energized and can't relax? Um, it can run the whole spectrum, and it's good to just kind of point to that and know what you're bringing in with you, because In the words of John Kabat-Zinn, everywhere you go, there you are, right? So you go everywhere you are. So, and the goal of observing this is to do just that. We will observe things in this practice. I will point your attention to various directions and give you a moment or two to observe it. And we'll kind of move on through the practice. And hopefully, with a curious attitude, we kind of come to learn something new about ourselves. And as you're kind of just getting a sense for where you are today coming to practice, um, this also gives you an opportunity to consider why you're here. It's not a question I often ask, but it is something to consider anytime we sit down to practice. Formally, we call this an intention. I call it your why. It's just something that's good to know, kind of what your motivator was for coming to practice, acknowledging it. It's almost as if we're honoring it. Like, I'm going to care for myself today. Cool. Like, that's something to be honored. One of the things that I like to have us do here in practice is we can use practice as a way to kind of explore. We explore various what we call objects. Sometimes it's our breath, sometimes it's our sensations. Um, right now, I want us to kind of explore or open our minds to a sense or a feeling of goodwill and joy that might be present in the moment. And it's really just an opportunity for us to offer this sense of goodwill and joy to ourselves. So often we are in service to others, but we don't ever stop to wish well for ourselves. So as we begin practice today, that's what I'm going to ask you to focus on here for the next couple minutes. And one of the ways that we can begin to give this gift of goodwill and this offering to ourselves is through the use of a what we call loving friendliness. It's a phrase that we use in meditation. And you simply repeat this almost like a mantra to yourself and see how that feels and notice what you notice when you kind of repeat it. And the phrase is, may I be well, happy, and peaceful. May I be well, happy, and peaceful. You can kind of slow that down to the point where you can see how that feels when you offer this to yourself and if it feels true for you or not. And I'm not asking for there to be a right answer here, but just an exploration. May I be well, happy, and peaceful. Take a minute or so to kind of sit with that. Now, even as you kind of repeat that phrase, may I be well, happy, and peaceful, you might notice that your mind gets distracted because there's stuff going on in there. And I would encourage you, when you recognize that the mind has wandered, to simply kind of return back to what you're concentrating on rather than get frustrated or upset or provide a story. Simply repeat the phrase again. And the phrase is meant to kind of point you to a feeling. It's just a general feeling of wanting, wishing well for yourself, that you deserve to be well, that it's okay for you to be happy, that it's okay for you to know what peace is like, and that these are things we all want. These are the parts of life that connect us all, and that it's okay to open yourself to the idea that you deserve to have all of them. And begin now to notice, as the phrases have kind of, you've been working your way through the phrases, notice the breath, how you're breathing right now in this moment. There's a there's a connected relationship to your mind, your body, and your thoughts, or the words you speak. And each one of them can influence the other. It's just often we're so lost in the thoughts or the words that we don't feel what's going on at the same time. So now I'd like for you to let your attention kind of notice, maybe say the phrases a couple times and notice what that does to the breath. And then we can begin to allow the phrases to drop away, but I want you to stay with your breathing. And I want you to give it the same level of attention you were giving to the idea of wishing yourself well and goodwill, and that loving friendliness. We simply take that same attention and now it turns towards your breathing. And instead of following a word, you follow the expansion and contraction of the breath. Noticing that the breath has its own rhythm and that it moves the body with that rhythm. And you might notice that as you observe the breath, that there's always this this bit of groundedness that comes with our breathing pattern. Because the next breath shows up, there's a sense of comfort that comes knowing that after you exhale, the cycle will start again, that you'll be reanimated, and that you don't have to really do anything here for this to happen. It's kind of life just unfolding right in front of you. And that idea is enough to feel good about. There's a bit of wellness and peace wrapped up in the next breath that cycles around. And if you find that the distractions are taking away from your ability to really slip into the rhythm of your breathing, the next distraction that comes up, give your attention to it in the same way I'm asking you to give your attention to the breath. And observe the flow of it, for it too follows a pattern and rhythm. Begin to let your breath expand beyond just the breath. So the breath in and of itself is its own sensation. And here, sensation is the word I use to describe the feeling of your breathing happening. But because the breath moves your body, it means that you can feel the sensations of your body as well. And it's as if you open up your attention even a bit wider and let those sensations kind of intertwine with the body sensations, intertwine with the breath sensations till it's just movement. The body's breathing you and you're feeling it in your abdomen or in the arms or the legs or whatever part of the body may be experiencing some type of sensation. And it's as if throughout practice we started from a very concentrated place and this thought, this idea of opening ourselves up to wishing well for us. That thought expanded to include our breath. That thought was reflected in our breathing. That breathing expanded to include our physical body. And as we sit kind of in the middle, observing everything that's changing moment to moment around us, we start to see that things that appear to be very solid have a little more fluidity to them than we maybe thought previously. And that if we start to loosen our grip a little, we start to gain back a bit of that space, that expansiveness that's always been present. It often feels constricted or shrunk down because our focus is too narrow. And when we start to see that there's a bit more room for ourselves, we can start to have room for others. So I invite you now to bring to mind someone who's important to you, someone that you care about, that you have an uncomplicated relationship with. And I just simply want you to think about them. Remember a time when you were together. Remember something you like about them. But as you bring this into your attention, I want you to go back to that original feeling we started class with, that idea of wishing well for yourself. And I want you to give that same thing to them. Wish for them to be well, happy, and peaceful. And allow yourself to feel that in the breath and in the body, to feel that wish of goodwill that you are offering up to those that you care about. Knowing that even though you wish well for those that you care about, that you desire this for them as well as you do for yourself, we balance that wish with the equanimity of knowing that we are individually responsible for our choices and actions and outcomes, that there's no requirement for us to bring this into fruition for them, but rather we just offer it from a heart centered place. In the last few minutes of practice, you can feel free to relax the mind. Just kind of let it be open, let it be free, let your attention wander instead of concentrating on any specific thing. Just kind of let it move from whatever captures it to the next. As we begin to close out practice, take a moment and just maybe return back to observing where you're at now, almost as if you can contrast it with where you were when practice started. Like sometimes we take a journey on these things. So just take a moment, acknowledge that, and when you're ready, you can start to blink the eyes open if you close them. Moment, take a breath. I'll give a quick recap. I was following a theme around this idea of expansion. And so some of that kind of came out throughout the practice, but we started in a different way. We started focusing on this idea of what we call loving kindness or loving friendliness. And it's the concept of helping to build or generate a sense of goodwill and compassion for ourselves. And so that's kind of how we opened up practice today, which is not usually what I do. But that is how we started practice today. And then we expanded that idea into our breath and then our breath into our body. And we kind of overlaid those a little bit. And then we moved from there into the sensations of the body and just seeing how all these things intertwine with one another. And then as a full circle moment, I brought us back to that same idea of loving friendliness, only instead of trying to offer that goodwill to ourselves, I wanted you to see what it felt like to offer it to someone else. Because for some of us, it's easier to offer it to others. It's really hard to offer it to ourselves. And so, if anybody out there was in that camp, wanted you to get an opportunity to experience the differences between the two. And then we came back to just our intention, our breath, and that was a full 30-minute cycle. So good job, everyone who made it through that. Thank you for listening to today's episode. I invite you to check out my Substack, where we are building a community of like minded individuals to discuss all topics related to the idea of paying attention. I hope to see you there. But until then, with Metta, may you be well.